Matt Kean, thanks for being with us. Has the energy crisis in New South Wales now been averted?
Well, according to the Australian Energy Market Operator, we're out of the woods for the time being, but what we saw last week were the challenges that we face with ageing infrastructure, a war in the Ukraine. It's putting the system under enormous pressure. What we know is to deal with this crisis, we need to build new infrastructure, and the sooner we can do that, the safer we'll be. And that's what we're doing here in New South Wales.
The uncertainty around climate policy for the past decade has caused the private sector to be reluctant about investment because they haven't been sure what to invest in. Has Australia missed the boat already on the economic opportunities that could have been had in this area?
Certainly not. What we're doing in New South Wales with our electricity infrastructure roadmap is give the private sector the confidence they need to invest in building the new generation, the new transmission, the storage and the firming that we're going to need to transition from our old system to our new system. And as a result of our policies, the underinvestment you've seen in past decades will now be turbocharged. In fact, by 2030, we'll see nearly 25,000 megawatts of new capacity built into the system, paid for by the private sector, worth $32 billion. So it just shows what good policies can do to drive investment and align with government policy.
On the way to 2030, as you try to make that transition, are we likely to see more of the kind of hiccups we've seen over the past week?
Well, what we want to see is a responsible transition. We've got plans in place to do that, but there's no doubt that the existing system is under increasing strain. We've got ageing coal-fired power stations, and last week what we saw was a situation when they don't work when you need them to work. So we need to replace that infrastructure, and that's what we're doing here in New South Wales. You're seeing prices being driven up because they're exposed to global commodity prices. The war in Ukraine is really having an impact on the electricity bills that mums and dads across the country are paying. So again, by modernising our electricity system, we can protect ourselves from global price shocks and events like war in the Ukraine.
Australia's former Treasury Secretary Ken Henry has said it's too late to have reliance on gas-fired power as a transition to renewables. What's your take on that?
Well, we think that there are a range of things that you need in the system to ensure system reliability. But what we do know is that gas-fired electricity is one of the things that's driving up electricity prices at the moment. The price of gas has more than quadrupled in the last month alone. And because we're relying more on gas to provide our electricity, largely because our coal-fired generators are becoming less reliable, what that means is that wholesale electricity prices are going up. So gas definitely has a role to play at the moment, particularly as our existing infrastructure is becoming less reliable. But what we need to do over the longer term is replace our existing infrastructure with a combination of renewables, storage and firming technology with transmission upgrades. That's what the Australian Energy Market Operator recommended. They're the policies that we've put in place, and that's why I'm confident over the medium to long term, New South Wales will be ahead of the pack when managing this transition in a responsible way.
What's your take on what the New South Wales Premier said the other day regarding Australia's energy woes being compounded by the ideological war over climate change in Australia?
Well, I think he's absolutely right. We've let politics get in the way of good policy. What we need to see when it comes to energy policy is a focus on engineering and economics, and that's exactly what our policies here in New South Wales are doing. So we've taken the ideology out of the policy area in New South Wales. We've worked in a bipartisan way with the Labor Party and, in fact, all the parties in the New South Wales Parliament to legislate clear plans that will give the market the confidence they need to invest and to build the infrastructure that's going to modernise our electricity system, keep the lights on, drive prices down and underwrite a renewable energy revolution in New South Wales.
When you talk about politics getting in the way, isn't it the Liberal and National parties who've been mostly responsible for driving that?
Well, not in New South Wales, Leigh. What we've done is put in place some of the most progressive policies that are focused on electricity prices, reliability and sustainability. And we've done that in a way that's been supported with multi-partisan support. We worked with the other parties in the Parliament to legislate this, to make sure that we can put the citizens of New South Wales first, put the businesses of New South Wales first, and deliver cheap, reliable and clean electricity that will set us up to succeed in the low-carbon world that we know is coming, where whether some of the people in federal politics or wherever like it or not.
In the New South Wales budget today, you allocated money towards universal pre-kindergarten, something that the Victorian and New South Wales governments are jointly doing. What has persuaded you as the New South Wales Treasurer that that is worth subsidising?
Well, I don't think I needed much persuasion. We know that the more you invest in our kids under 5, the more likely they are to thrive on their entire life journey. So this is doing the right thing by our kids, and it's also doing the right thing by our state. We know that if you give our kids the best start in life, that we set them up to have less interface with the juvenile justice system, less interface with poor health outcomes, better education outcomes, and higher living standards. That's a policy and an investment that we want to make every day of the week, which is why we announced it in this budget. This is a reform budget. We're reforming things like investing in universal pre-kindergarten. We're reforming things like making sure that people can buy their first home. And we're reforming things by delivering policies that allow women to participate more fully in our economy. And these are reforms that we're very proud to make.
Matt Kean, thanks for your time today.
Leigh, thank you, and thank you for all you've done delivering the news to us so well for so many years.
Thanks very much. Hi, I'm Leigh Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.